Hey there, self-care warriors. Welcome back to Self-Care Haven. Today I'm going to be reading out loud excerpts from my Huffington Post article, Why Sex with a Malignant Narcissist is a Dangerous Power Play, and I'll go into the 7 main ways that malignant narcissists sexually manipulate and belittle us, and how they use sex as a weapon against their victims, as well as some tips on how to take your power back. Now, one of the most powerful ways that a narcissist is able to sexually entrap you is through love bombing you about your body, about your personality, about your sexual prowess, your chemistry, your physical connection. They may claim that you are the best physical experience that they've ever had. They may claim that they haven't had this kind of physical connection with anybody else, only to later devalue and triangulate you, of course, after the idealization phase is over. But when they are love bombing you, they're caressing you not just with their physical touch, but also their love bombing words. They're getting you to associate them with pleasure on every single level. They're getting you to associate them with that biochemical addiction and cocktail that occurs when we have that huge rush of dopamine and oxytocin during the early stages of a relationship, when we're first establishing physical intimacy with someone, and the narcissist actually convinces you that they are the most amazing lover that you've ever had. And they're able to do so because that sense of psychological safety and emotional intimacy that they create and manufacture through love bombing is actually creating that illusion. So regardless of whether or not they're a skilled lover, which some narcissists are, and some narcissists actually fall short of that, whatever their sexual skill set and prowess may be, you still feel overwhelmed by the connection that you two have built together, and that actually strengthens all these reward circuits in the brain, and the unpredictable nature of the relationship actually strengthens that sexual bond and creates the sense of unparalleled chemistry that is actually an illusion. Now, another thing, a manipulative way that narcissists use sex is by using sex as a reset button, where they can resume the relationship right after an incident of abuse has occurred. So when they begin devaluing you, when they begin to withdraw from you, and they start to stonewall you or verbally criticize you or degrade you in other ways, they may use passionate makeup sex to reconnect with you right after these abusive incidents. And this is done on purpose. It's to create this emotional roller coaster of highs and lows, even after a breakup or a break from the relationship. And in fact, research has shown that those with narcissistic or psychopathic traits tend to maintain contact with their ex-partners in order to have access to sex as well as resources. And this is to ensure that the narcissist is able to keep the cycle going with the various members of their harem. Because they've built this strong sexual connection with each member of their harem, they know that they can basically try to come back at any point and ensnare the victim, whichever victim they choose, back into the cycle again, just to devalue and triangulate and belittle them. And sex actually acts as a kind of love bombing recruitment tool to restart that process all over again and to groom you back into that cycle. Another way that malignant narcissists use sex maliciously is by engaging in infidelity, betrayal, making lewd remarks, objectifying you through their actions and their words about your body. They may also excessively use pornography and compare you to the porn stars that they see on the screen. They may engage in flirtatious or lewd sexual remarks or messages with other members of their harem in front of you or behind your back. They may engage in multiple affairs, exposing you to putting your sexual health at risk. And they tend to be pathological liars, so they can keep up this game for a long time and make it seem like they're being faithful while they're living these double lives. And they're also able to pull you into competition for their attention and their approval, because you feel so bonded to them that when they start seeking other sources of narcissistic supply, if you are trauma bonded to them, you may feel like you need to seek their approval, you need to compete for their attention. You may even place the blame on yourself, wondering, why do they have to seek these other people? And the answer to that is, it's because of them. It has nothing whatsoever to do with you or your desirability. They are predatory individuals, and they will use whatever they can as a hunting ground for new supply. Because if they're a psychopath, they are always going to be looking for novelty and what they perceive to be the next best thing, even if that next best thing is just simply new and it's not necessarily better or worse. That's why it's so important for you to recognize your own irreplaceable qualities and understand your own worth and develop that sense of worth, so that you are resistant to these types of individuals when they try to triangulate you. Because the only way to really win this game is to not compete at all, and to remember that healthy partners communicate to their primary partner how irreplaceable they are and how lucky they are to have them, and make them feel appreciated and adored on a daily basis. And you deserve exactly that. You are not here to play second fiddle to anyone. You are the main character of your life. And once you start to cultivate that sense of irreplaceability and uniqueness and feel special all on your own outside of the narcissist, and acknowledge all the internal and external qualities that make you unique, that make you irreplaceable, you can become that much more immune to these types of tactics. Now, according to research, a person's narcissism levels is actually positively correlated with the number of hours that they spend watching pornography. So narcissistic individuals tend to engage in the objectification of their partners, and they will then justify their pornography use or their real-life infidelity, whether it be emotional infidelity or physical infidelity, by comparing that kind of fantasy that they see on the screen to their real-life partners. So you may find a narcissist criticizing something about your sexual performance, for example, that seems to fall short in comparison to what they're seeing and internalizing from the screen. And the more narcissistic they are, the less willing that they are to acknowledge that you are a multifaceted human being with rights and feelings, and you deserve to be respected as that individual human being. Another way that a narcissist can devalue you sexually is by comparing you to their previous partners in some way. They may claim that you guys are not engaging in sex often enough, and that his or her former partner, ran week-long marathons of sex. Whatever it may be, this type of horrific triangulation is meant to demean you, to undercut you, to make you feel less confident sexually. The less sexually confident you are, they believe that you are less likely to move on to a different partner, because they project their fear that you will suddenly jump into the sack with someone else right after them, which is actually their kind of behavior. Likely you're an empathic person who would need time to actually get over a breakup or the ending of a relationship before you sexually reconnect with someone, whereas they are already going behind your back and engaging in these numerous flirtations. So one way to resist this is obviously going no contact with such a person, but also cultivating a very strong sense of body image and self-love. Remember healthier feedback that you've received from past relationships. If you don't have that kind of healthy feedback, then give it to yourself. Great self-love for your body image, your internal and external qualities, as I mentioned before. Engage in diverse healing modalities, especially mind-body healing modalities that allow you to reclaim power over your own body and its agency. Now, the next way that a narcissist can demean you sexually is by becoming hypercritical of your appearance, your sexual desire, your sexual history, and fail to account for the complexity of your identity. And this also goes back to things like objectification and excessive pornography use. Narcissistic individuals tend to identify with what is known as the Madonna whore complex. They basically tend to categorize their victims and various targets into being sexually pure, the Madonna, or promiscuous nymphomaniacs. To them, there's really no sexual middle ground. You're this or you're that. They can't really identify you as this kind of multifaceted person that can be a sexual balanced human being who is someone with both integrity as well as a strong sense of sexual well-being. And this can play into gender stereotypes too. So for example, if a female victim of a narcissist is successful and intelligent, she may be seen as less feminine in a male narcissist's eyes. Or if a male victim is sensitive and empathic, he may be seen as less masculine or powerful by a female narcissist. In the narcissist's mind, it seems unacceptable and even incomprehensible that someone could be both sensitive and powerful, feminine and successful, sexual and intelligent, beautiful, desirable, and dignified. There are so many false dichotomies that a narcissist creates when it comes to sex and sexuality. So that's why you may find that, a male narcissist, for example, may marry someone who he perceives to be sexually pure, someone who is the Madonna, not the whore, but then they'll have affairs with women that they perceive to be whores or sexually promiscuous because they want someone at home that caters to their every woman need, and they perceive that the Madonna will do that, whereas the whore is there to meet their sexual needs. So it's a very interesting dichotomy, and gender stereotypes definitely play a role in this, especially when it comes to male narcissists specifically. So if a narcissistic abuser comes across a target who has seemingly contradictory traits that are often socially stereotyped as separate, for example, a partner who is sexy yet well-rounded and funny and successful and intelligent and educated all at the same time, that's a threat to the narcissist's rigid dichotomies, because they will want to stereotype that person as the whore, as nothing more than just someone who is an object to fulfill their sexual needs. They can't really place them in a separate identity as a multifaceted human being with thoughts and feelings and desires and talents, and can't think of them as someone with integrity, because they assume that that person must just be a whore, or whatever they want to call a person that they perceive to be promiscuous. And this form of rigid dichotomization also applies to how abusers will use their victims' sexual history against them. It manifests in the way that they suggest that their victims are too uptight or too sexless or too frigid, or if their victims are more sexually reserved to do emotional abuse, they may call them all of these things. But if the victim is more open with their sexuality, they may call them easy or slutty. If they're more sexually liberated, they call them derogatory terms. They refer to them as objects, and it's really difficult to be treated as anything but an object in the narcissist's eyes, whether you are sexually open or sexually reserved. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because the narcissist will categorize you regardless, and they won't see your full humanity. So whether they are objectifying you and making you feel like just a set of body parts, or whether they're making you feel like an appliance, a trophy wife, a pure Madonna, either way, you are an object in their eyes, and you will never be seen as fully human, sexually or otherwise. Now, in the worst case scenarios, malignant narcissists may actually sexually coerce their victims into sex acts that they're not comfortable with. They may invite people into the sexual dynamic of the relationship and force their victims to comply with these interactions without regard for the victim's feelings, rights, or desires. They may also deliberately re-traumatize you using your sexual trauma history or things that you've told them you feel uncomfortable about. So they may coerce their victims into scenarios that they're not comfortable with, like threesomes, orgies, swingers scenarios, cuckolding, BDSM, things that they don't want to consent to. And these coercions can happen in other ways as well. They may try to force their victims into sending provocative photos, which they can use to blackmail you, or coerce their victims to make sexual videos with them, or even take photographs of you without your permission. Some narcissistic abusers will even use your past trauma history against you. So if you have a history of sexual trauma, they can start to hint or claim that your sexual assault or rape was your fault, or the way that you handled it was your fault. For example, if you decided not to report to the police, they may try to overly judge you, criticize you for that. They may try to insinuate that your assault took away some sort of essential part of you, that it damaged you, or that you're used, which is of course victim shaming nonsense. But they may even use degrading lingo in the bedroom to re-traumatize you and to shame you. This is to dig deeper into the sexual wounds that already exist within you and to gaslight you about their own sexual and emotional abuse. After all, if they're able to convince you that your past sexual trauma made you somehow defective or damaged to see reality properly, they're able to gaslight you even more powerfully. Now, in the context of a narcissistic parent can actually sexually abuse their children because they see their children as extensions of them, as objects. They may engage in covert emotional incest, parentifying their children with adult personalities and responsibilities. Or they may even try to micromanage every facet of the sexuality of their children. For example, refusing to speak about sex at all or their growing bodies, refusing to educate them about sex, or punishing them for engaging in sex or expressing their sexuality in any way. A narcissistic father may heavily monitor you if you're a daughter and shame you for your sexuality. A narcissistic mother, on the other hand, may even compete with you as a sexual being because they tend to envy the beauty and youth of their daughters. They may even disclose things about their sex lives that is very inappropriate to do when conversing with children. So in paving the path back to freedom, survivors of narcissistic parents or partners will likely find it very helpful to seek some sort of professional trauma-informed support to regain their sense of sexual agency and security, to address any childhood wounding, as well as engaging in things like yoga and meditation, which can be ways to remaster your sense of self and power that you have over your own body. And finally, malignant narcissists can show sexual disinterest to deliberately instill insecurity in their victims. They may withhold affection while also simultaneously accuse their victims of sexually withholding from them after heinous acts of physical or psychological violence. So what they'll do is they may withhold affection from you, but if you dare to not engage in a sexual activity with them, they will start to become very demanding, very shaming. They may act like you're a child for not engaging in sex with them. And usually victims are not withholding sex. They're simply not engaging in sex because they don't want to, because they've been physically or emotionally abused by the narcissist, and they just don't feel that sense of intimacy with them. And you have to remember that no one is allowed to abuse you, demand sex, and then have the nerve to shame you for not engaging with them intimately. In fact, they're never allowed to shame you for not wanting sex. If your partner, especially if your partner is subjecting you to emotionally abusive acts like stonewalling and triangulation and verbal abuse, they should definitely not be expecting any kind of sexual connection from you. They have already violated your mind, so they're not entitled to your body regardless. Remember that healthy partners would never have to force or coerce their victims, their partners, into sexual acts that they're uncomfortable with, or make them feel guilty when they feel too emotionally drained to engage sexually. And honestly, you don't need a reason to never have sex. You can simply say no. No is a complete sentence, in the words of Gavin D. Becker, and it's not a negotiation. Now, on the other hand, narcissistic abusers can withhold affection from you while engaging in infidelity, and they may even act like they're very sexually disinterested in you in order to degrade your sense of desirability throughout the relationship. Again, in the idealization phase, they will be all over you. They'll crave sexual interaction with you 24/7, but in the devaluation phase, they will claim that you never sexually excited them at all, or even more heinous things. This is to make you feel unworthy and to make you feel like you have to compete or work even harder to gain their sense of attention again. Now, to be clear, relationships have a sexual ebb and flow. There may be normal stages of interest and disinterest throughout a relationship over the years, And constructive feedback can help in a healthy relationship to grow sexually or otherwise. But in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, sexual disinterest is deliberately employed in order to degrade you, to make you feel like you are subjected to their contempt and their hatred and their disdain, and to make you even more trauma bonded with them after incidents of abuse. So you start to feel less sexually confident, you start to feel less confident in general psychologically, and just more trauma bonded to your abuser throughout the cycle of abuse. And the key to healing from this type of sexual manipulation is first to identify the forms of sexual manipulation and coercion that you may have experienced in a relationship with a narcissist. Learn which of these tactics were used deliberately to demean you. Learn how to love yourself, learn to self-validate when it comes to your body, your sexuality, your sense of sexual agency, as well as your personality. And in new relationships, really emphasize that sense of emotional intimacy first before fast forwarding into the sexual aspects of that relationship, so that you can better understand whether that person is willing to connect with you on a level that transcends sexuality and is willing to invest in you outside of the physical aspect. Now, while sex with a malignant narcissist is more of a power play than an equal partnership, you can still take your power back. Survivors of malignant narcissists ultimately have the advantage in this scenario once they begin to heal. They're able to authentically establish emotional connections and sexual connections and authentic intimacy with their future partners without manipulation or coercion involved. They have the ability to sustain healthy relationships that are fulfilling on an emotional, physical, and spiritual level. And this is something that the narcissist will never have. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have an experience with how a malignant narcissist sexually manipulated you, or you have some insight into how these tactics were used against you, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments section below. Check out the article using the link in the description box. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out my latest book, available in all major bookstores, published by New Harbinger Publications, The Highly Sensitive Person's Guide to Dealing with Toxic People, How to Reclaim Your Power from Narcissists and Other Manipulators. It's been endorsed by amazing therapists and experts in the field, including Dr. George Simon, which I'm sure you all know is the amazing author of Wolves in Sheep's Clothing. And he also has amazing insights into narcissism. Be sure to check out that book, and I hope you guys are doing well. I hope your summer is off to a great start. Talk to you guys soon, and until next time, take care.